Jack Williams stood at the edge of the playground watching the other kids play. His worn-out sneakers told a story of struggle, of a family fighting to survive in the small industrial town of Manchester. The cold November wind cut through his thin jacket, a hand-me-down from his older brother that had seen better days. At 13, Jack understood hardship better than most children his age. His father had lost his job at the steel factory 6 months ago, and since then every penny counted. Mornings were tough. His mother would wake up before sunrise, preparing sandwiches made from whatever they could afford, sometimes just bread and margarine. Jack would help her pack his younger sister's lunch, making sure she had something to eat at school. The local community center had an old boxing gym, and that's where Jack found his escape. After school, while other kids played video games or hung out at the local shops, he would spend hours training. The gym was a sanctuary, a place where his family's financial struggles didn't matter. An old punching bag hung in the corner, its leather cracked and worn, but to Jack it was more than just equipment. It was a promise of something better. Mr. Peterson, the gym's elderly coach, saw something special in Jack. He was different from the other boys who came and went. Jack had a fire in his eyes, a determination that went beyond simple teenage rebellion. "You've got heart, boy," Mr. Peterson would say, watching Jack practice his footwork. Boxing isn't just about throwing punches, it's about surviving. At school, Jack was invisible. He wasn't the smartest kid, nor was he the most popular. But in the gym, he was transforming. His body was becoming stronger, his movements more precise. Each punch was a rebellion against the poverty that tried to define him. Each drop of sweat was a promise to his family that things would get better. His mother would often work double shifts at the local diner, her hands rough from washing dishes and serving endless cups of tea. Jack would see the tired lines on her face and feel a mixture of love and determination. He wanted to make her proud, to show her that their struggles weren't in vain. The other kids at school didn't understand. They would laugh at his patched clothes, whisper about his family's financial situation. But Jack learned to block out their comments. In the gym, he was building something more than muscle. He was building hope. Winter was the hardest time. Their small house never seemed warm enough. Jack would share his blanket with his little sister, ensuring she stayed warm during the cold Manchester nights. His father would sit by the window, looking for job opportunities, his pride wounded. By unemployment, boxing became Jack's language of hope. When he trained, he wasn't just a poor kid from a struggling family. He was a fighter, someone with potential. Mr. Peterson would teach him not just about boxing techniques, but about life. Character is built in moments of challenge, he would say, demonstrating a perfect left hook. Jack's routine was simple but disciplined. School in the morning, helping his family in the afternoon, and then training at the gym. He would run miles before sunrise, skip rope until his hands were calloused, and punch the bag until his arms felt like they would fall off. His family noticed the change. His mother would smile more, seeing the determination in her son's eyes. His father, once defeated by job loss, started to show signs of hope. Jack was proving that their circumstances didn't define their future. The local boxing tournament was approaching. It wasn't just a competition for Jack, it was a lifeline. The prize money could help his family, could be a turning point. Every punch, every training session was a step towards that moment. As the winter sun set over Manchester, casting long shadows across the industrial landscape, Jack Williams continued his training. He was more than just a teenage boy from a struggling family. He was a fighter, preparing to show the world what true resilience looked like. In the quiet of the gym, with only the sound of his fists hitting the punching bag, Jack knew one thing for certain: his journey was just beginning. The local boxing tournament poster hung in the community center's window, a beacon of hope for Jack Williams. His fingers traced the bold letters, imagining the possibilities that lay ahead. But hope was a fragile thing in his world, easily crushed by the harsh realities of life. Tom Harris was the school's biggest bully, a 15-year-old whose anger seemed to fill every hallway. He came from a different world, wealthy parents, brand new clothes, and a confidence that bordered on cruelty. Jack had been his favorite target for months. "Look at those shoes," Tom would laugh during lunch break, pointing at Jack's worn-out sneakers. The other kids would snicker, their eyes cutting into Jack's already wounded pride. Jack would keep. Silent, his mother's words echoing in his mind. Silence is sometimes the strongest response. The boxing tournament was more than just a competition. It was Jack's chance to prove something. To himself, to his family, to the entire town that seemed to have written him off. But Tom was determined to break his spirit before he even got started. One cold afternoon, Tom cornered Jack behind the school gym. "You think you can actually win?" he sneered, pushing Jack against the brick wall. "Your family can barely afford food, and you want to be a boxer." The words were like physical blows, each one designed to wound deeper than any punch. Jack's father had lost his job months ago, and the entire family was struggling. Some days dinner was just bread and weak tea. His mother worked double shifts at the local diner, her hands rough and cracked from endless washing and cleaning. Jack knew the weight of their financial burden, and Tom's words hit exactly where. They would hurt most. But Jack had learned something important in the boxing gym. Mr. Peterson had taught him that true strength wasn't about how hard you could hit, but how much you could endure. Fighting isn't just about physical strength, the old coach would say. It's about heart. It's about keeping your spirit unbroken. The tournament was just weeks away. Jack's training intensified. Early mornings, late nights. He practiced until his hands were raw and his body ached. The punching bag became his confession booth, each strike releasing the frustration of poverty, of bullying, of endless struggles. Tom's harassment continued. He would trip Jack in the hallways, spread rumors, make sure everyone knew how little Jack had. But something was changing in Jack. Each challenge made him stronger, more determined. His little sister became his unexpected source of strength. Emily, just 10 years old, would sit and watch him practice. "You're going to be a champion," she would say, her eyes full of absolute belief. Her faith was pure, untouched by the cynicism of their difficult life. The night before the regional qualifiers, Jack's family gathered around their small kitchen table. His father, usually quiet and defeated, looked at him with a mixture of hope and pride. "Your mother and I," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "we've always believed in you." Jack understood that this wasn't just about winning a boxing match. It was about giving his family hope. Each punch, each hour of training was a promise that their struggles wouldn't define them forever. Tom represented everything Jack was fighting against: privilege, bullying, the belief that some people were born to succeed, while others were destined to fail. The tournament was becoming more than a competition. It was a battle of spirits. As the qualification day approached, Jack felt a mixture of fear and excitement. Mr. Peterson's training, his family's sacrifices, his own determination, everything was converging into this moment. Tom might have money, might have social status, but Jack had something more powerful, an unbreakable spirit. The community centre buzzed with anticipation. Young boxers from across Manchester gathered, each with their own story, their own dreams. Jack stood quietly, his worn boxing gloves a testament to his journey. Tom watched from across the room, a smirk playing on his lips, but Jack was no longer the scared boy who would shrink under his taunts. He was a fighter, ready to prove that. True strength comes from the heart, not from the size of your wallet or the loudness of your voice. The first bell was about to ring. Jack's journey was about to truly begin. The community centre's boxing gym was quiet that evening, with only the soft sound of a single speed bag rhythmically tapping in the background. Jack Williams stood alone, practicing his footwork, unaware that his life was about to change. Mr. Roberts had been watching Jack for weeks. The old boxing coach wasn't like other instructors. His hands were weathered, his face mapped with lines that told stories of countless battles, both inside and outside the boxing ring. He saw something in Jack that reminded him of himself 40 years ago, a raw, unpolished determination that couldn't be taught. Jack's movements were awkward but passionate. He didn't have expensive training gear or professional equipment. His gloves were patched, his shorts slightly too big, but his eyes burned with an intensity that couldn't be ignored. Mr. Roberts remembered his own childhood, growing up poor in Manchester's industrial neighbourhoods, fighting not just in the ring but for every opportunity. As Jack finished his practice, Mr. Roberts approached him. The boy tensed, expecting criticism. Instead, the old coach pulled out a pair of boxing gloves from an old leather bag. They were worn but well maintained, the leather smooth from years of use. "These were mine when I was your age," Mr. Roberts said, his voice soft but strong. "I won my first championship with these gloves." Jack hesitated, his hands trembling slightly as he touched the gloves. They felt like more than just equipment. They were a piece of history, a connection between two fighters separated by generations. Mr. Roberts saw the struggle in Jack's eyes. He knew about the boys' family, how they were struggling, how Jack was fighting not just for himself, but for his entire family. "Boxing isn't just about winning," he explained. "It's about surviving. It's about proving to yourself that you're stronger than your circumstances." The old coach began sharing stories from his own past, how he had come from a poor family, how boxing had been his escape, his ticket to a better life. Jack listened, captivated. For the first time, someone was seeing him, truly seeing him, not as a poor kid but as a potential champion. That night, Mr. Roberts offered Jack something more valuable than training. He offered hope. He promised to help Jack prepare for the upcoming tournament, to teach him techniques that went beyond physical skills. "A true fighter," he would say. "Fights with his heart first, his fist second." Jack's family was surprised when he came home that evening. His mother noticed the new gloves, the spark in his eyes. "Someone believes in me," Jack said, his voice filled with a newfound confidence. Mr. Roberts began spending extra hours with Jack. They would train early in the morning before the sun had fully risen. He taught Jack not just boxing techniques, but life lessons. How to move, how to think, how to survive both in and out of the ring. The other kids at school started noticing a change. Jack walked differently, carried himself with a quiet confidence that hadn't existed before. Tom, the school bully, found his usual taunts less effective. Jack was transforming, becoming something more than just a poor kid from a struggling family. Mr. Roberts understood something profound about mentorship. It wasn't about creating a champion boxer. It was about helping a young person discover their own strength, their own potential. He saw in Jack a reflection of his younger self, hungry, determined, fighting against impossible odds. Their training sessions became more than just physical preparation. They were conversations about life, about overcoming challenges, about finding strength in moments of weakness. Mr. Roberts shared wisdom that went far beyond boxing techniques. "The hardest fights," he would tell Jack, "are the ones we fight inside ourselves. The ring is just a place where we prove what we've already won in our hearts." As the tournament approached, Jack felt different. He wasn't just preparing to fight. He was preparing to prove something, to himself, to his family, to the entire community that had often overlooked him. The old gloves Mr. Roberts had given him became a symbol of hope. They represented a connection between past struggles and future possibilities. Every punch Jack threw carried the weight of those memories, the promise of transformation. Jack Williams was no longer just a poor kid from a struggling family. He was becoming a fighter, in every sense of the word. The Manchester Community Centre buzzed with nervous energy. Boxers from across the region prepared for the regional tournament, their families filling the uncomfortable plastic chairs. Jack Williams stood in the corner, Mr. Roberts adjusting his worn boxing gloves, the same ones passed down from the old coach's own boxing days. Tom Harris watched from across the room, his expensive boxing gear a stark contrast to Jack's patched shorts and second-hand equipment. The bully's eyes burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief. He was determined to humiliate Jack in front of everyone. Jack's mind drifted to his family. His mother had taken an extra shift at the diner to afford his registration fee. His father had mended his boxing shorts the night before, his hands carefully stitching each tear. His little sister Emily sat in the front row, her eyes wide with excitement and hope. Mr. Roberts gave Jack a final piece of advice. "Remember," he whispered, "this isn't just about winning. This is about proving your worth. Fight with your heart, not just your fists." The first match began. Jack could hear the crowd, could feel the pressure of every expectation. This wasn't just a boxing tournament. This was his chance to change everything, to prove that poverty wasn't a life sentence, that dreams could be fought for and won. His opponent was bigger, stronger, more experienced. But Jack had something most fighters didn't, a lifetime of struggle that had built an unbreakable spirit. Each punch he threw carried the weight of his family's sacrifices, of endless cold nights, of his mother's tired hands, of his father's lost job. Tom watched from the sidelines, his confidence slowly crumbling. Jack moved differently now. He wasn't the scared boy he used to be. Each step was calculated, each punch precise. Mr. Roberts' training showed in every movement. The first round was brutal. Jack took several hard hits, but he didn't fall. He remembered his mother's words. Getting knocked down is part of fighting. What matters is getting back up. And up he would go again and again. Halfway through the match, something changed. Jack found his rhythm. His punches became faster, more strategic. The crowd began to notice. This wasn't just a fight. This was a story of determination unfolding before their eyes. His family watched, holding their breath. Emily clutched her mother's hand, her eyes never leaving her brother. His parents saw more than just a boxing match. They saw hope. Hope that their struggles might finally be turning around. The final round arrived. Jack was bruised, exhausted, but unbroken. Tom's smirk had disappeared, replaced by a look of disbelief. Jack wasn't just competing, he was proving a point about resilience, about the power of believing in yourself. With seconds left, Jack delivered a combination of punches that left his opponent stunned. The crowd erupted. It wasn't just a victory in a boxing match. It was a victory against everything that had tried to hold him back. When the referee raised Jack's hand, the community center exploded with cheers. Mr. Roberts stood in the corner, tears in his eyes. He saw more than a boxing victory. He saw a young man discovering his own strength. Jack's first look was toward his family. His mother was crying, his father was standing with pride, and Emily was jumping up and down. In that moment, Jack understood that winning wasn't about the trophy. It was about hope. It was about proving that where you come from doesn't determine where you can go. Tom stood silent, his bullying suddenly meaningless. Jack had done more than win a match. He had transformed himself, proven that true strength comes from the heart, from determination, from refusing to be defined by your circumstances. As Jack left the ring, Mr. Roberts put a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just win a fight today," he said quietly. "You won a future." The tournament might have been about boxing, but Jack's victory was about something much bigger. It was about hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit of a young man who refused to be beaten down by life's challenges. In that moment, Jack Williams wasn't just a boxer. He was a symbol of possibility, a reminder that with enough heart, anything is possible. The morning after the tournament felt different. Jack Williams walked through Manchester's streets with a new confidence, the boxing trophy tucked safely in his backpack. The entire town seemed to look at him differently now. News travels fast in small communities. The local newspaper had featured his story, a young boxer from a struggling family who defeated the odds. People who had never noticed Jack before now stopped to congratulate him. The trophy wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a symbol of hope for everyone who had ever felt like an underdog. At school, everything changed. Tom Harris, once the most feared bully, now avoided Jack's gaze. The other students who had previously laughed and mocked now looked at him with respect. Jack hadn't just won a boxing match, he had earned their admiration. His family's small living room became a shrine to his achievement. The trophy sat on the mantelpiece, surrounded by photographs and his mother's carefully preserved mementos. During dinner, Jack's father spoke with pride he hadn't shown in years. "You've given us all hope," he told Jack, his voice thick with emotion. Mr. Roberts continued to be Jack's mentor. The old coach saw the tournament as more than just a victory. "Boxing teaches you about life," he would tell Jack during their training sessions. "It's about getting up when you've been knocked down. It's about fighting even when everything seems impossible." Jack's little sister Emily became his biggest supporter. She would watch his training with wide-eyed admiration, practicing shadow boxing in their tiny living room. "I want to be just like you," she would say, throwing playful punches in the E. The prize money from the tournament was a lifeline for the family. Jack's mother could reduce her work hours, his father could look for better job opportunities. But the real value was beyond money. It was the renewed sense of hope, the belief that they could overcome their challenges. Local businesses began to notice Jack. The community center offered him a part-time job, helping with youth boxing programs. Mr. Roberts recommended him for additional training opportunities. Doors that had always seemed closed were now opening. Jack understood that his victory was about more than just boxing. It was a message to other kids in similar situations that your circumstances don't define your potential. He started helping other young boxers from struggling families, sharing the lessons he had learned. The transformation wasn't just external. Jack became more confident in school, more focused on his studies. The discipline he had learned in boxing translated into every aspect of his life. Teachers who had previously overlooked him now saw his potential. His relationship with his family grew stronger. The shared struggle, the collective victory, had brought them closer together. Dinners became moments of storytelling, of shared dreams and possibilities. Jack's victory had given them all a new narrative. Tom, the once powerful bully, found himself increasingly isolated. His previous tactics of intimidation no longer worked. Jack had shown that true strength comes from character, not from fear or aggression. The community began to change too. Local businesses started sponsorship programs for young athletes. The boxing gym received more funding. Jack became a symbol of what was possible when opportunity met determination. Mr. Roberts often reflected on Jack's journey. Some fights are won inside the ring, he would say, but the most important battles are the ones we fight in our hearts, in our minds. As months passed, Jack continued to train, to study, to help his family. The trophy remained on the mantelpiece, not as a sign of past achievement, but as a reminder of future possibilities. Jack Williams had done more than win a boxing tournament. He had changed the story of his family, of his community. He had proven that with hard work, determination, and belief, anything is possible. The little boy who once stood invisible in school hallways was now a beacon of hope. His journey was just beginning, but he had already won the most important battle, the battle to believe in himself. In the end, Jack's story wasn't just about boxing, it was about the triumph of the human spirit, about proving that where you start doesn't determine where you can go.